Welcome to another week of AusBiz. We are equity mates. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy Ren. And Ren, I was thinking in my head I was going to nail this week with intros, and it didn't work. How are you going?
I'm very good, Bryce. Good to see another week, and nothing has changed. Our intros are as tight as ever, and if you're new to the show, that's what you can expect every episode. But you know, we're here. We're starting our week on a Tuesday.
But for no other reason than we decided to take a public holiday.
Well, I mean, yeah, there was a public holiday yesterday in Sydney, but the markets didn't close and most of the finance industry didn't take the day, but we did.
We did. But we're back with a really good week coming up. We've got some experts, Watchlist Wednesday as always. And today, two big headlines. One that we're seeing a lot of, and that's the debt ceiling. And another that if you spent all weekend watching TV, you've probably seen a lot of it, and that is Squid Game.
Yeah. And what we're seeing emerge in Netflix's business, which could be a really interesting, sustainable competitive advantage. But really, Bryce just watched Squid Game over the weekend and wants to talk about it.
No. Look, it's fascinating what's going on in that space. We did talk about it in our Thought Starters email that went out, so looking forward to getting to that. But Ren, let's start with the debt ceiling, because there are a lot of headlines starting to come out, and there are going to be more to come, and we're getting a lot of questions. What does it all mean? It's nothing new, as we'll touch on, but look, it can be pretty overwhelming with this whole Biden coming out and saying that if we don't sort it out, it's going to be a meteor. What do you say? Meteor into the side of the U.S. economy, cataclysmic. So what's going on?
Yeah. Well, as most people know, basic economics, governments need to borrow money.
Yeah.
And some governments decide to put arbitrary limits on the amount that they can borrow, which may cause issues when they need to pay for things.
Yeah.
And the US government is one such government that's put a limit on the amount that they can borrow, the amount of debt that they can have. And over the last 60 or so years, the US government keeps running into that debt ceiling and keeps realizing they can't borrow more money, and so they need to raise more money. And we have reached the latest iteration of this debt ceiling limit. And when I say the latest, I do mean the latest. I think it's been raised 78 times in the last 60 years.
Yeah.
And basically every time we get here, the headlines are the government's going to run out of money. The US is going to not be able to pay interest on US Treasury bonds. The US credit rating will fall. The global financial system could collapse. And we get a bunch of headlines and then nothing happens.
Yes, sensationalist to its max. So you've mentioned the deadline there, and this time around it's the 18th of October.
Yeah.
And that's the deadline that the US Treasury have essentially said, guys, if we don't raise the ceiling, the debt ceiling again by this date, then we are essentially going to run out of money to be able to, and I think you mentioned it briefly there, but pay things like essential services and, pay for essentially like the US Treasuries and those sorts of things.
Yeah. So under Trump, I think the debt ceiling was raised 3 times, and then both sides of the government agreed to suspend the debt ceiling for 2 years.
And when you say suspend, you mean have no limit?
Yeah, basically, like the government can borrow what they need to borrow, and we're not going to say there's an arbitrary limit on the amount of debt that the government can have. That suspension, 2-year suspension of the debt ceiling, expired in late July, and then since then the Treasury has really been, pinching every penny to make the money last. Things like suspending investments in like certain federal pension funds and retirement and disability funds. Like they've been trying to conserve cash. They've been trying to stay liquid. And the Treasury has estimated that, the 18th of October is when that liquidity will run dry.
And so we've heard from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. She said to the US Senate last week that America could default for the first time in history, and that defaulting could have catastrophic economic consequences. It would force us, the government, to default on obligations. We hear this all the time.
Yeah.
But what could happen if
yeah.
it's not increased?
Yeah. So if the debt ceiling isn't increased, the first thing we'll say is a government shutdown.
Which we've seen before.
Yeah. And that's when basically the federal government doesn't have the cash to operate. And so non-essential workers are sent home, government services are suspended. It's basically like a government goes to its skeleton essential crew and everyone else go home, we can't pay you.
Yeah, it's not like a go home, take a break while we sort this out. It's actually quite sad because a lot of them, well, they don't get paid.
They don't get paid.
Yeah, and so it's no fun for those people.
No, it's not. And
Yeah.
and like critical government services can't be delivered.
Yeah.
And on top of that, and this is from a financial point of view, this is the thing that that has a global impact is if the US government doesn't have the cash to pay interest on bonds, then they start to default on those bonds.
Which, when the bonds are spoken as of being the safest investment one could almost take, that would have catastrophic consequences.
US treasuries are the globally accepted risk-free rate of return.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be disastrous. Yeah. The last government shutdown, we've spoken, it has happened plenty of times before, was at the end of 2018 going into...
So I think just to frame this, like we've just said things could be very catastrophic.
Yeah.
The market doesn't seem to think so.
No,
and this is where
it doesn't. Yeah. So 23rd of December 2018 to the 25th of January. So just over a month, the government was shut down, couldn't pay, couldn't operate.
2018 to 2019.
2019, yeah. The Dow Jones rose 10.2% and the Nasdaq was up 13.1%.
Yeah.
So the market obviously have just gone, guys, we know this happens. It's happened 78 times before. Just get on with it.
Yeah, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 78 times, no more shame left. But look, this is a game. And this is a game, and then the media writes headlines. And it's fair that they're writing headlines because the impact could be catastrophic. Like, this time could be different, but it's unlikely that it will be. But the important thing is that the game has really ramped up in recent years. Like, we saw 2011 shutdown under Obama. We saw the 2018 government shutdown under Trump. Back in the day, raising the debt ceiling was pro forma, it was, everyone understood that this has to be done. Yeah. Government has to be able to pay its debts. The government needs to be able to raise money to fund essential services. But more and more, it's become this political fight. And we're seeing a political fight play out now.
Is it going to be any different this time? Like I think the Democrats can now, I think, vote anything through. So why are we having this argument?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. This is why it's a game. Because for people who watch US politics closely, there's 50 Democrats in the Senate, and some things can be passed with 50 Democrats through reconciliation, and then other things need 60 votes. And they're struggling to get anything that requires 60 votes through at the moment. The debt ceiling can be raised via reconciliation. So if all Democrats and Kamala Harris, the vice president, comes in and breaks the tie, they can raise the debt ceiling.
Easy. But why don't they just do that?
Yeah, good question.
Seems like an absolute waste of time if they don't.
Yeah.
Are they just trying to play the game here and make it seem that Republicans aren't supporting this?
Yeah, well, there's politics. There's politics to be had on both sides. On the Republican side, they want to oppose it because, that Australian politics has been characterised by debt and deficit, fear-mongering for years. Tony Abbott, that was his catch cry and it worked.
Yeah.
Same in America.
Yeah.
People are scared of debt. So there's politics to be had on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, talking about Republicans not wanting to spend at the same time they're trying to pass all of these things that are really politically popular, infrastructure, climate change action, childcare, a whole bunch of things. If they can tie these policy priorities to the fact that Republicans don't want to pay for them and don't want to raise the debt ceiling, that's good politics as well. So there's politics to be had on both sides, but so many market analysts, Morgan Stanley, Oxford Economics, there's a bunch of institutions that have written research notes that have basically said, we're going to hear a lot of noise for a couple of weeks, then the Democrats will pass it from a party line vote. Yeah,
seems such a waste of time. And I mean, our good friend Warren Buffett in 2011 had similar thoughts, saying that it seems like such a waste of time for a country that's got a lot of things to do. he'd love to see them eliminate the idea, which makes more sense to me, and because it just results in these periodic stalemate operations where everybody uses it for posturing purposes. So,
and that's where we're at now.
And that's where we're at right now. So don't be alarmed if you see everyone say the world is going to collapse. Highly likely, in fact, you would say it's going to happen that they will raise the debt ceiling by some means. But Ren, let's move on.
And if they don't and the US government defaults on their debt, well, then we were wrong.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. But look, we did say at the top, Squid Game, it's one of the hottest shows on Netflix for a lot of people at the moment. But there is an interesting story behind it, and that is how Netflix is using local TV shows and production to create a bit of a competitive advantage against some of the other streaming players.
Yeah, so the locally produced and non-English shows are just killing it on Netflix at the moment. So let's go through a list of some of them. Obviously, Squid Game is the one that's capturing everyone's attention at the moment. That's South Korean. But some other ones, Money Heist.
Loved it.
A Spanish show,
Yeah.
Elite.
Didn't see it, but I'll add it to the list.
Okay, my housemate Rowie is a big fan, one of his guilty pleasures.
Okay.
And he'll hate me saying that. Also Spanish, Lupin.
Yep.
Cracking show.
Good
French,
show.
Barbarian.
Nah, don't know it.
Haven't seen it either, but German, Unorthodox.
Okay, yeah.
German show, but mostly in Yiddish.
Yeah.
Alice in Borderland.
Watching, not as good as Squid Game.
Okay, Japanese.
Yeah.
Narcos.
Great.
Mexican show in Spanish.
Yeah.
Who Killed Sarah?
Haven't seen.
Also Mexican in Spanish. #Alive.
Nope.
No, I haven't seen it either. South Korean, and now Squid Game, which is also South Korean. That's just some of the shows that have killed it across the world, and in particular in Western English-speaking markets that were locally produced outside of these English-speaking countries and were subtitled.
And this is a strategy, though.
Yeah. So the strategy for Netflix was to produce, be a global platform that produces local language shows that are authentic to the vision, the country, and the landscape. And that's from Netflix's global head of TV. And that's important for them because a lot of their growth is coming outside of English-speaking countries. 80% of new sign-ups last year came from outside the US and Canada. And a big driver of their growth these days is in Europe.
Yeah, wow.
And if you're gonna be a global platform, you need locally produced content in every language. So that was the strategy. But what they found is that these shows are transcending local audiences, and that they're just killing it. So in August 2021, Netflix global head of TV said Lupin was not just their most popular local language original, i.e. non-English original, but it's the most popular show they launched so far on Netflix in 2021.
Wow.
I would say if we asked him today, he would say Squid Game gets that.
Yeah.
But these titles are dominating. I pulled out some stats. So Money Heist Season 4 hit the top 10 most watched list in 92 countries.
Wow.
Barbarians, 91 countries. #Alive, 90 countries. Ragnarok, which is a Norwegian show, 89 countries. Lost Bullet, a French show, 89 countries. Like these non-English shows are getting mass appeal, mass viewership. They're killing it around the world.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they now seem to be ramping it up. Netflix has made shows in 40 different countries. Subtitles those in 37 different languages. I'm a big believer of subtitles, by the way. Never watched...
Like you believe they exist?
Yeah, they're quite good. They have dubbed them in 34 different languages. Not a fan of dub.
Yeah, dubs suck. Yeah, I'm a big fan of subtitles as well, except even on English language shows, except for comedies.
Yeah, okay, fair, because you need the delivery.
Yeah.
But we know Netflix is notoriously secretive about their viewing numbers. However, 97% of US subscribers watched at least one non-English show in the past year. So that's an example of this sort of transcending countries, as you've said. And since 2019, non-English language viewing in the US is up 71%. And I can attest to that. I mean, I'm watching far more of these shows as well, which I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. Some of the best content that we're seeing is non-English language.
Yeah.
And so like that's a really interesting story that's playing out. But I think what is like the investment story or the finance story behind it is that this could be the beginnings of a really sustainable competitive advantage for Netflix, because these locally produced shows that just blow up globally is something that Netflix is quite unique in being able to do at the moment. Important to say at the moment.
Yeah.
But if you think about their big streaming rivals, they're either local players, you know, like Stan in Australia, or they're very American. You know, Disney Plus is the second biggest, HBO Max, Paramount Plus is trying to expand around the world. Amazon Prime Video. They're all very American focused. And Netflix is truly building a global stable of content, which is something that will take the other players years to really catch up on.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Disney tries to play the Spanish, the South Korean, the Japanese local content if they do.
And Disney's strength is their portfolio of IP, and it is incredibly strong. And Netflix will never be able to match that. But their portfolio of IP is incredibly Western.
Yeah. Well, as always, a lot happening with big tech, and it's just going to be fascinating to see this all play out. However, I am loving having a good variety of non-American content flooding our streaming channels, well, Netflix in particular. But anyway, we will be back tomorrow with Watchlist Wednesday, and as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.